After that night, I became pregnant by you, the Apache woman said. Then be my wife. It was early morning when James arrived in the small frontier town. The sun had just started to rise, casting a warm golden light over the wooden buildings and dusty streets. Birds sang softly in the distance, and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery mingled with the scent of horses and hay. James was a young man, in his mid-20s, traveling alone. He had spent months moving from town to town trying to find work and a place where he could feel he truly belonged.
The life of a traveler was not easy. Every day brought uncertainty, and every night brought loneliness.
But James had always believed that life had a way of leading people to where they were meant to be, even if the path was hard to see at first. As he walked through the town, he noticed the quiet way the people lived. The townsfolk were simple, kind, and cautious. Everyone seemed to know each other, and strangers like him were watched with curiosity. James understood that in such a small community, trust had to be earned, and respect had to be given. He decided to start by visiting the trading post, a place where people gathered, exchanged goods, and shared news. The trading post was a wooden building with a small porch and swinging doors. Inside, the air smelled of dried herbs, leather, and a faint trace of gunpowder. Behind the counter stood an older man with a weathered face, his eyes sharp and alert. He greeted James with a nod, and James introduced himself politely, asking if there were any work opportunities nearby. The man shook his head slowly. "Not much work for a traveler these days," he said.
"But if you're willing, there's always chores to be done around here. Folks like to help each other."
"You might find something if you're patient." Patience had never been one of his strongest traits, but he reminded himself that he had to earn his place here, like anywhere else. He thanked the man and stepped back outside, breathing in the fresh air. He wanted to explore the area before settling in. The town was small, but beyond it lay vast stretches of land, open plains, and forests. That was where he hoped to find purpose, perhaps even friendship. While walking along the edge of town, he noticed movement near the woods. A figure appeared, moving gracefully between the trees. At first, James thought it was an animal, but as the figure stepped into the light, he realized it was a woman. She was tall and strong, with dark hair braided neatly and eyes that seemed to hold wisdom far beyond her years. She wore simple clothing made from leather, decorated with small beads and patterns that reflected her culture. James froze, unsure how to approach her. He had never met anyone quite like her. There was something about her presence that was both powerful and calm, a quiet strength that made him feel both nervous and intrigued. The woman noticed him staring and gave a small nod. "Desk." She did not speak immediately. Her gaze was steady, observing him as carefully as he observed her. James decided to take a cautious step forward. "Good morning," he said softly. "I'm James. I mean no harm." "I'm just traveling through your land." The woman tilted her head slightly and studied him. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but clear.
"You are far from your home, traveler."
"The lands here are not always kind to strangers." "Why do you come?" James hesitated, thinking about how much to reveal. "I'm looking for work, and perhaps a place to belong. I've been moving for a long time, and I hope to find a community where I can live honestly and earn my keep." The woman's eyes softened slightly, though she remained cautious. "Words are easy to find. Actions are harder. You must learn to survive here, or the land will teach you its lessons in ways you do not wish." James nodded, understanding her warning. He had faced many challenges before, but he could sense that this land and this woman were different. There was a mixture of danger and beauty here, a reality that required respect and patience.
I understand, he said. I am willing to learn.
The woman studied him for a moment longer, then motioned toward the woods. Patient. If you are serious, follow me, but do not speak unless you are asked. Listen and watch. That is the first step to understanding. James swallowed his nervousness and followed. The forest was thick, and the path was not easy to see. Sunlight filtered through the tall trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. Birds called to one another, and somewhere in the distance a river flowed. The woman moved with ease, stepping over roots and rocks without hesitation. James struggled to keep up, careful not to make too much noise. After walking for some time, they reached a clearing where the woman stopped. She gestured to a small fire pit surrounded by stones. Around it were several items neatly arranged: tools, food supplies, and a few personal belongings.
This is a place of safety, she said.
Not all who come here have good intentions. You must understand this.
James looked at the fire pit and nodded. I do.
Thank you for showing me. The woman did not respond immediately.
Instead, she sat down and began tending to the fire, adding small pieces of wood and adjusting the flames. James watched, learning not just from her words but from her actions. The careful way she handled the fire, the respect she showed for the land and the tools she used. There was a quiet lesson in everything she did.
As the hours passed, they exchanged small stories.
James told of his travels, the towns he had visited, and the people he had met. The woman spoke of her family, her community, and the lessons she had learned from the land. Despite their differences in culture and experience, they found common ground in their hopes and fears. There was mutual respect, slowly growing into a quiet friendship. At one point, a sudden noise startled them, a deer moving quickly through the forest. The woman reacted instinctively, raising her hand to signal James to stay still. The deer passed without incident, and James realized how much he still had to learn. The woman's instincts were sharp, honed by years of living close to the land.
He admired her skill and wished he could be as aware and confident in the wilderness as she was.
By the time the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the clearing, James felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had learned a little about the land, about survival, and about the woman who had guided him. There was a silent bond forming between them, unspoken but undeniable. The woman looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "You are different from others," she said. "Perhaps you can learn. Perhaps you can understand." James nodded, feeling a warmth he had not expected. "I want to learn," he said. "I want to understand, and I want to be worthy of your trust." The woman gave a small, approving smile. "Time will tell," she said. "But tonight you will stay here. You will eat what is provided, and you will rest. Tomorrow we continue. There is much to show, and much to learn." James agreed, grateful for her guidance and patience. As he lay near the fire that night, listening to the sounds of the forest, the rustling leaves, the distant river, the occasional bird call, he felt a sense of hope he had not felt in a long time. For the first time, he imagined a future that was not lonely, a future where he could belong, where he could be part of something greater than himself. And though he did not yet know it, this encounter, this small clearing in the forest with a mysterious and strong woman, would change his life forever.
It was the beginning of a journey filled with challenges, lessons, and emotions he could not yet understand.
But James was ready to take the first step, trusting that the land and the woman who guided him would show him the way. The next morning, James woke before the sun had fully risen. The soft glow of early daylight filtered through the trees, casting long, gentle shadows across the clearing. The sound of the river in the distance and the birds calling from the treetops filled the air with life. He stretched carefully, trying not to disturb the small fire that still glowed faintly from the night before. Sitting up, he saw the woman already moving around, gathering herbs and preparing food with quiet efficiency. James admired her silently. Every movement she made was precise and purposeful, reflecting years of experience living close to the land. She did not waste a moment. She picked herbs carefully, washed them in the nearby stream, and arranged them neatly for cooking. He realized that survival was more than knowing where to find food. It was about respecting it, treating it with care, and understanding the natural world.
"Good morning," James said softly, not wanting to startle her.
Did you hide the breath? She looked up briefly, her eyes calm but observant.
You are awake early.
Good. There is much to do today. James nodded.
I want to learn.
I will do whatever you ask. She studied him for a moment, then returned to her task.
Words are easy, she said. Actions are what matter.
Today you will carry water, help with the fire, and watch closely. Learn by seeing, not just by hearing. James followed her instructions carefully. He fetched water from the stream, feeling the cool liquid run over his hands. He helped arrange wood for the fire, observing the way she selected each piece, how she placed it to burn efficiently, and how she adjusted the flames to cook the small meal she had prepared. As they ate, she spoke of the land, telling him stories of the forests, the animals, and the traditions of her people. Each story was a lesson, a way to understand life beyond mere survival. After the meal, she gestured for him to follow her deeper into the forest. The path was rough, uneven, and sometimes almost invisible beneath the leaves. James stumbled a few times but kept pace, careful not to fall behind. The woman moved with a grace and confidence that he could not match. Yet he was determined. He knew that if he wanted to earn her respect and trust, he had to try, no matter how difficult the journey. As they walked, the woman pointed out signs in the forest, tracks of animals, marks on trees, and subtle changes in the wind or the smell of the earth. "You must pay attention," she said. "The land speaks to those who listen. It tells you where water is, where danger may lie, and where food can be found. Ignoring it can be costly." James listened closely, trying to absorb every detail. He noticed how the animals seemed to respect her presence, not running away even as she moved through the underbrush. It was as if she belonged there, part of the land itself. He felt both awe and a sense of humility. He realized that this journey was not just about surviving physically. It was about understanding, respecting, and connecting with the world around him. By midday, they reached a small clearing near the river, where the sunlight reflected off the water in sparkling patterns. The woman stopped and turned to James. "Rest here for a while. We will practice hunting later. You need strength and patience, both of which are tested in different ways." He watched her move along the edge of the clearing, examining plants, checking the water, and occasionally writing small marks in the dirt with a stick. He realized that every action she took was deliberate, meaningful, and part of a larger understanding of life he had never known before. After some time, the woman returned and began showing him the basics of hunting. Not with a gun, but with simple tools, traps, and observation skills. She explained how to read tracks, how to understand the habits of animals, and how to move quietly so as not to alert them. James struggled at first, clumsy in his movements and unsure of what to focus on. But she was patient, correcting his mistakes with a quiet firmness that demanded attention. "You cannot rush," she said. "Patience and observation are stronger than strength." The land rewards those who wait, not those who act hastily.
Hours passed, and James began to understand her meaning.
By evening he was exhausted, but had learned more in a single day than he had in months of wandering from town to town.
The bond between them grew stronger, not through words, but through shared experience, trust, and mutual respect.
They returned to the clearing near the fire, where the woman cooked a small meal of fish and herbs she had cut and gathered.
As they ate, the conversation became more personal.
James spoke of his family far away, of the towns he had visited, and the loneliness he had felt. The woman listened quietly, her dark eyes reflecting both empathy and understanding. The responsibilities she carried and the lessons she had learned from her people. Though their worlds were very different, they found common ground in the universal experiences of struggle, hope, and desire for connection. As night fell, the woman built a small fire while James sat nearby, feeling a mixture of admiration and something deeper, an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. They shared silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, and the gentle flow of the river. There was a quiet intimacy in simply being near one another, a feeling of trust growing between them that went beyond words. Later, as the stars appeared overhead, the woman looked at James with a steady gaze. "You have learned much today," she said softly. "But learning is not just about skill.
It is about understanding, respect, and connection. You are beginning to see the world differently."
Do you understand what I mean? James nodded, his thoughts heavy with the day's lessons. "Yes," he said. "I feel it. I feel that there is more to life than I have known, and I want to understand it. I want to learn from you and the land." The woman's expression softened slightly. "Then you must continue to observe and listen. Tomorrow brings new challenges." The forest is not always gentle, and life does not always wait for those who hesitate. The night grew colder, and James realized he had much to reflect upon. He thought about the woman, her strength, and her quiet guidance. He thought about the land, the lessons it offered, and the connection he felt beginning to form. He felt a mix of fear and excitement for the days ahead. Something inside him had changed, something that made him feel alive in a way he had never experienced before. Hours later, the fire burned low, and James finally drifted into a restless sleep. In his dreams, he saw the forest alive with movement, animals running, leaves rustling, and the river sparkling in the sunlight. And always, the woman was there, guiding, teaching, watching. He woke several times during the night, feeling her presence even in the darkness, a quiet reminder that life was about connection, respect, and understanding. The following morning, the woman approached him with a small task. "Ba ba 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 ba. Today we will practice more than survival. You will learn about trust, about patience, and about the choices that shape a life." "Are you ready?" James nodded, feeling both nervous and eager. He had begun to see the depth of the woman's wisdom and the importance of the lessons she taught. This was not just survival, it was life itself. He realized that the bond between them was growing stronger, not just through proximity, but through shared experience, respect, and the quiet understanding that words alone could never convey. As they moved deeper into the forest, James felt a strange combination of fear and exhilaration. Each step brought him closer to understanding the land, the woman, and, perhaps, himself. He knew that life was about to change in ways he could not yet imagine.
And that night, under the same stars that had watched over them before, the quiet connection between James and the woman deepened.
There was an unspoken trust, a mutual recognition of each other's strength, and a hint of something more. Something neither of them fully understood, but both felt strongly. The night was calm, but it carried the weight of the choices to come. the lessons of the forest, and the beginnings of a bond that would shape their lives forever. James lay awake by the fire, thinking about the day and the woman who had guided him so patiently. He realized that this was more than a simple friendship forming. It was a connection that challenged everything he had known and felt before. And as the forest whispered around him, he knew that the coming days would test him in ways he could not yet imagine, leading to moments that would change his life forever. The following days were filled with lessons and quiet companionship. James had begun to feel that the forest itself was alive, and that the woman's guidance was teaching him more than just survival. It was teaching him life. Each morning they rose with the sun, gathering food, fetching water, and exploring the lands surrounding the clearing. The woman taught him how to recognize edible plants, how to track animals without disturbing them, and how to move silently through the forest so as not to alert any creatures nearby. But beyond the lessons of survival, James learned patience, humility, and respect. The woman spoke little, but when she did, her words carried meaning. She spoke of family, responsibility, and the importance of living in harmony with the land. She also shared stories of her people, stories of courage, loyalty, and honor. Through her tales, James began to understand the world in a way he never had before. Thus, he saw the strength of her community, the wisdom passed down through generations, and the quiet pride that shaped her every action. One late afternoon, after a long day of practice and exploration, the woman suggested they rest near the river. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the water with gold and orange reflections. They sat together on a large flat rock, letting their feet dangle in the cool water. The quiet sound of the river, combined with the soft breeze through the trees, created a peaceful moment that James had never experienced in his travels. The woman glanced at him, her dark eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him uneasy and captivated at the same time. "You have learned well," she said softly. "But there is more to life than knowledge and skill. There is understanding, and there is heart." James looked at her, unsure of what she meant. She smiled faintly, a hint of warmth in her expression. "Trust must be earned," she continued, "and sometimes the heart must be tested before it can grow stronger. Do you understand?" James nodded slowly. "I think I understand," he said. "You mean that life is more than just surviving. It is about caring for others, about making choices that matter, and about respecting the people around you." "Yes, you are beginning to see. But understanding is only part of it. Experience is what truly teaches." That night, as they sat near the fire in their clearing, the woman began to tell a story of a time when she had faced danger alone. She spoke of a sudden storm, of how the river had risen and how she had been forced to rely entirely on her wits and strength to survive. James listened intently, fascinated not only by her courage but by the calm way she recounted events that would have terrified him. Her strength inspired him, and he realized that he admired her more than he could explain. As the fire crackled, the woman looked at him with a soft intensity. "James, you are learning much about the forest, but you must also learn about yourself. Courage is not just about facing the outside world. It is about facing your fears, your doubts, and your heart. The scarce mixture of nervousness and something unfamiliar but profound. He had never felt this way about anyone before. The connection he felt with her went beyond friendship. It was a pull he could not resist, even though he did not fully understand it. He realized that in the quiet moments near the fire, in the shared experiences of the day, he had begun to care deeply for her. Days passed, and their bond grew. They shared meals, stories, and quiet walks along the river. James began to understand not only the forest but also the unspoken connection forming between them. There was trust, respect, and a sense of comfort in each other's presence. But it was a rare feeling, one that he had never experienced in his travels. a feeling that made him both excited and apprehensive about what might come next. One evening, after a long day of teaching James the art of tracking, the woman suggested they return to the clearing before nightfall. The sky was painted in hues of purple and pink, and the forest seemed to glow with a magical light. They walked in silence, their steps synchronized as if moving together had become second nature. The woman stopped at a familiar spot near a small grove of trees, where the light of the setting sun filtered through the leaves in delicate patterns. She turned to him, her gaze steady. "Tonight you must rest, but I will ask something of you," she said softly.
Do not fear, but listen carefully to your heart. There are choices that define us, and the heart often guides them.
James nodded, unsure of what she meant but trusting her completely. He had come to respect her wisdom and her strength, and he knew that whatever she asked, it would be meaningful. As night fell, a cool breeze swept through the clearing, carrying the scent of pine and the river. The woman built a small fire while James helped gather wood. They sat together, close but not touching, watching the flames dance and listening to the forest around them.
The night was quiet, almost sacred, and James felt a sense of peace he had never known.
The woman spoke again, her voice low and calm.
James, the time has come to understand the fullness of life, the joy, the fear, and the responsibility that comes with it. You must be honest with yourself and with me.
James's heart pounded. He did not fully understand what she meant, but he felt a deep sense of anticipation.
I will be honest, he said quietly.
I promise. The woman studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Good. You have learned much, but tonight you must also feel. There are moments that cannot be taught with words or actions alone. There are moments of trust and closeness that define the bond between two people. James felt a warmth spread through him, a mixture of fear, excitement, and admiration. He realized that he cared for her deeply, and he sensed that she felt the same. There was a quiet understanding between them, a connection that went beyond friendship or companionship. It was a moment of honesty, of recognizing their feelings for one another without words, and it carried a weight that neither could ignore. They sat by the fire, speaking softly, sharing their thoughts and fears. The woman spoke of her past, her family, and the responsibilities she carried. James shared stories of his travels, his hopes, and the loneliness he had felt.
In that exchange, they found not only understanding, but also comfort.
Each word, each glance, and each shared silence strengthened the bond that had begun in the forest days earlier. As the night deepened, the woman placed her hand gently on James's arm. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried meaning, trust, connection, and an unspoken recognition of their growing feelings. James looked into her eyes and saw the same mixture of emotions reflected there: fear, admiration, and something more tender, something that spoke of a bond forming that neither could ignore. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by the soft sounds of the forest, they allowed themselves to feel the closeness that had been building for days. They spoke in whispers, sharing thoughts, hopes, and fears that they had never revealed to anyone else. It was a night of discovery, not just of each other, but of their own hearts. James realized that this moment would change everything. The trust, respect, and understanding they had built over the past days had led to something deeper. He understood that life was no longer just about survival or wandering from town to town. It was about connection, about caring for someone deeply, and about the choices that define who we are. The woman looked at him one last time before they settled to rest, her eyes soft with quiet emotion. "Tomorrow we continue," she said. "But tonight, let this moment remind you of what is important. Trust, respect, and the heart guide us more than skill alone."
James nodded, feeling a profound sense of peace,
For the first time, he felt that he was part of something meaningful. The forest, the woman, and the experiences they shared had opened his eyes to a new way of living, a way of understanding life that went beyond survival, beyond wandering, and beyond loneliness. As they lay near the fire that night, the stars shining overhead, James knew that the bond between them had grown stronger than he could have imagined. There was a quiet promise in the night, a recognition of feelings that could not yet be named but that would shape their lives forever. And though the forest was still calm and peaceful, both James and the woman felt the weight of what had begun. A connection, a trust, and a closeness that would lead them toward a future neither could have anticipated. A journey that would bring joy, challenge, and the profound realization that life is richer when shared with someone who understands the heart. The morning after their quiet night by the fire, James awoke with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. The air was crisp, and the forest around them seemed alive with the gentle sounds of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the distant flow of the river. He felt a sense of peace he had never known before. Yet deep inside, he sensed that today would be different. Something unspoken lingered in the air between him and the woman, a quiet weight that made his heart race. The woman was already awake, gathering water from the stream. She moved with the same quiet grace he had come to admire. When she saw him watching, she smiled faintly, and it was a smile that carried both warmth and seriousness. "James," she said softly, "come with me. There is something we must speak of today." James followed her through the forest, curiosity and a hint of nervousness tugging at him. They reached a clearing he had not noticed before, a place where the trees arched high and sunlight filtered down in soft golden beams. It was peaceful, almost sacred, and James felt that the moment held importance beyond words. The woman turned to him, her expression serious but calm. "James, the time has come to speak honestly, to face what is real, and to consider what comes next. Life does not wait, and neither do the choices we make."
James felt his heart pounding. He did not fully understand what she meant, but he sensed the gravity in her tone.
"I will listen," he said. "Tell me what is on your mind." Her eyes meeting his. "After that night," she said quietly, "I became pregnant by you. This is not a matter of choice. It is life itself. And now I ask you something important. Be my husband, James. Stand with me and our child, and let us build a family together." James felt the words sink in slowly, their weight pressing on his chest. Patience in his life. But this revelation was both unexpected and profound.
He looked at her, seeing not only her strength but the vulnerability in her eyes, a vulnerability that mirrored his own fears and hopes.
I don't know what to say, he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. "I never expected this. But I know that I cannot turn away. I want to stand with you. I want to be worthy of your trust and of the life we are beginning together."
The woman's eyes softened and a faint smile appeared on her lips. "Words are easy, James.
Actions are what matter. If you truly mean this, you must show it in the days, months, and years to come.
Life will not be simple. It will challenge us.
But together, we can face it."
James nodded firmly. "I promise. I will face it with you."
"I will protect you and our child. I will learn what it means to be part of this family, part of this life, and part of your world." Absorbing the significance of their decision, the forest around them seemed to recognize their resolve, the wind whispering through the trees as if acknowledging the beginning of something new. James felt a profound mix of responsibility, love, and hope. He realized that life had brought him here for a reason. To this woman, to this place,
and to the future they would share. Over the following days, James began to prepare for this new chapter in his life. He worked alongside her, helping gather supplies, tending the fire, and learning the ways of her community.
Each task was an opportunity to show his commitment, to demonstrate his willingness to learn, and to build trust not only with her but also with the larger world they were part of.
The woman guided him patiently, offering advice, correcting mistakes, and teaching him the traditions of her people. She explained the importance of family, the bonds that held communities together, and the value of respect, honesty, and patience. James listened intently, realizing that the lessons she taught were not just practical. They were moral, emotional, and spiritual. They were lessons in life, love, and responsibility. As they prepared a meal one evening, James paused to reflect on how much his life had changed. He thought about the lonely days of wandering, the uncertainty of his travels, and the longing he had felt for connection and purpose. Now, he had both. He had a family forming, a woman who trusted and respected him, and a future that, while uncertain, was filled with meaning. The woman noticed his thoughtful expression and placed a hand on his shoulder.
James, you think too much of the past, she said gently. The past has brought you here, but the future is what matters.
What we do now, how we act, and how we care for each other will shape the lives of those who come after us.
James nodded.
I understand. I will do my best. I want our child to grow up knowing love, respect, and safety. I want to learn how to be the husband you deserve. Her smile was soft, filled with warmth and approval. Let us continue to live, to learn, and to prepare for the life we will share.
In the weeks that followed, James and the woman worked together to make their clearing more comfortable and secure.
They built a small shelter, collected extra firewood, and prepared food that would last through difficult days.
Each task was done side by side, strengthening their bond and deepening their connection.
James learned not only the practical skills needed for survival, but also the subtle ways in which love and partnership could be expressed through care, patience, and shared responsibility. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and pink, the woman looked at James with a quiet seriousness. "Tomorrow we will speak to my family," she said.
"They must know of your intentions and your commitment. It is an important step for their trust and for ours."
James felt a mixture of nervousness and resolve. Meeting her family, he knew, would be a test of his sincerity and character. He wanted to show them that he was not just a traveler passing through, but someone who would honor their traditions, protect their family, and embrace the responsibilities of marriage and fatherhood. The next day, they traveled together to the nearby village where her family lived.
The journey was filled with silence, each of them lost in thought.
James felt the weight of the moment pressing on him, but he also felt strength in the bond they shared. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he was committed to this path. Upon arrival, they were greeted with cautious curiosity. Her family studied James carefully, noting his appearance, his demeanor, and the respect he showed toward them and their traditions. The woman introduced him honestly and directly, explaining their connection and the life that was beginning. James spoke sincerely, expressing his commitment to her, to their child, and to the responsibilities he was ready to accept. Her family listened intently. There were questions, concerns, and moments of silence, but James answered each with honesty and humility. He spoke of his respect for their traditions, his willingness to learn, and his desire to be a partner and father who would honor the bond they were forming. After what felt like hours, her father spoke. "We see honesty in your eyes," he said.
"We see respect. It is not enough to speak. You must act."
"But we believe that you understand what is required. You are not yet part of our family, but you have shown the strength and heart needed to be considered worthy." James felt a wave of relief and gratitude. He bowed respectfully, acknowledging the trust they had placed in him. The woman's eyes met his, and he saw pride and approval shining there. He realized that the hardest part, the test of his sincerity, had passed. Over the following months, James and the woman continued to prepare for their future. They worked together to strengthen the clearing, gathered supplies for the child, and learned from one another in ways both practical and emotional. Breaths. Their bond deepened with each passing day, rooted in trust, respect, and a shared vision of the life they wanted to build.
As her pregnancy progressed, James grew more attentive, learning not only the physical needs but also the emotional care required.
He learned to be patient, supportive, and attentive, understanding that the life they were creating was a responsibility and a blessing. The woman, too, guided him, teaching him the subtle ways in which partnership and love could be expressed beyond words. Finally, the day came when they decided to unite in marriage, a quiet ceremony surrounded by nature and the few close members of her family. There were no grand celebrations, no elaborate preparations, just sincerity, commitment, and love. They exchanged vows not only to each other but to the life they were building, promising respect, support, and care for their child and for one another. James looked into her eyes as he spoke his vows, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and purpose. He knew that life would not always be easy, that challenges would arise, and that their journey would require courage and patience. But he also knew that together they could face whatever came their way. The woman smiled, placing her hand gently in his. "We begin our life together," she said softly. "Desk, not just as partners, but as a family. The future is ours to shape, and together we will honor it." As the sun set behind the trees, casting long golden shadows across the clearing, James felt a profound sense of peace. For the first time in his life, he felt truly home, not just in a place, but in a life shared with someone who understood him, trusted him, and loved him. Their journey had been unexpected, challenging, and life-changing, but it had brought them together in a bond stronger than either had imagined. And as the forest whispered around them, carrying the promise of new beginnings, James and the woman stepped forward into their shared future, ready to embrace the joys, challenges, and love that awaited them, knowing that together they could face anything.